So it can sound like whoever speaks about this knows what they're speaking about. And that's not true. It's also not true that they don't know what they're speaking about. I can't say I don't know what I'm speaking about. And yet I can say I don't know what I'm speaking about. That's how paradoxical it is. There's no longer a concern about knowing. Whereas for me, I was always very concerned that if I was going to be speaking about something, if I was going to say something, then it better be true. And I would know the difference between truth and untruth. I would know the difference between knowing and not knowing. I don't know the difference. That's the illusion. The illusion is knowing when I know and knowing when I don't know. And you could say that virtually all of seeking is seeking to fill the gaps in my knowledge, the gaps in my understanding, in the hope that by filling the gaps, then my knowledge and my understanding will be complete. And that would bring me to completion. That I am incomplete because my knowledge and understanding is incomplete, and that I could attain completion. And the miracle is that there is no one to attain completion. And yet this is already complete. There is no one to be whole. There is only wholeness. And wholeness sounds like one. But you could say, you know, I like plays on words. And I do like it that wholeness with a W and wholeness with an H are both accurate descriptions of what we're speaking of. The completion is empty. The whole is a whole. And in that, there's nothing to find. There's no more work to be done. That doesn't mean to say work can't appear to be done, but there's no requirement. There's no need for more work. There's no need for more seeking. There's no need for more relationships. There's no need for more love. Simply because there can't be any more. The whole illusion that self tells itself is that there could be more or less. So I am is a project. A self-improvement project. Because I'm not enough. I am is the sense of not being enough. But this is all. Whether there's a sense of not enough or too much, this is all. Feel free to ask anything or share anything.
David has his hand up.
Hey, David.
Hi, Tim. Nice to see you again.
And you.
A bit of devil's advocacy.
Good work.
I was getting asked to justify Tony Parsons, which is not fair, actually, but I'm about to ask you to do that.
Oh, for goodness sake.
No, it's just, I was revisiting a book of his I really like, actually, but I think he's probably completely denounced by now. But it's a lovely book called All There Is. And the kind of strap line on the back, the big opener, is just a one sentence. Seeking is the most effective way to avoid liberation. And I'm trying to imagine anything more dualistic than that.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's a recurring problem in
it is.
non-duality, isn't it? I mean,
it is, yeah.
Because that's not far away from seek and ye shall find, really. But one thing is definitely leading to another.
Mm-hmm. I will. It's not my job to defend Tony Parsons, but
no, I know that.
But I would defend it in that he probably wouldn't say that now. He doesn't let others off the hook for fucking up in the same way in their previous. You know what I mean? Seems slightly unfair. True.
I mean, it's always semantics and it's just pedantic drivel. But I mean, it's the selling point of the book, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, seeking is the most effective way to avoid liberation. I don't know.
The thing, I mean, I wouldn't say that.
Not now. Yeah.
Not now or never. No, I wouldn't say that because the seeking and the seeking is inevitable for self. They're one and the same. That's how it seems. So whilst there's a sense of me, while there's a sense of being separate and being incomplete, then there can only be the energy to try and move towards completion.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, at the end of the day, all of it is just what's happening. And
it's all that's happening, yeah. And it's not that, you know, that sense of being me, it's in no way is it wrong, but there's no doubt that it is seemingly the root of all suffering.
Mm-hmm.
If not all suffering, that's too big a statement, but most psychological suffering is that, isn't it?
But the implication here is that you can do something about it.
Yeah, and that's, yeah. Tony would very clearly say, as I would say, there's nothing you can do about it because whilst you are the sense of I can do something about it, that is the very energy of seeking.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, whether you state it clearly or not, just a sentence like that, seeking is the most, you know, the implication is, I'm going to get shot at seeking.
Yeah, and getting shot of seeking is just more seeking.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's all just drivel, but, you know.
It's all drivel. How wonderful. No, I mean...
people get genuinely confused by these things, I think. You know,
I can see how you...
Problematic. You can see how, you know. It's,
yeah. And if not confused, then certainly frustrated.
Oh, mildly.
Yeah. To put it mildly, yeah. It can just... You could say it can just exacerbate the problem. I'm the problem, and so I need to get rid of myself, which is the problem. Mm-hmm. And the very getting rid of myself just is more of the same problem.
Yeah. Okay, that's me. Thank you. Thanks very much.
A lovely bit of shit stirring. Thank you. No, but I don't disagree with anything that you're saying at all. Mm. It's just, I mean, this message is just dreadful for the seeker. If this heard, I mean, for most seekers, it's not dreadful at all because most seekers don't. This just passes by. You know, it doesn't touch the sides, because there's plenty of paths that say, you know, there's a lot that you can do. But I do agree, the message that, you know, you're doing is the problem, and the seeming, you know, that if there wasn't that, then there wouldn't be a problem. Well, that is the problem.
Yeah.
It's piling on the pain in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I say, I don't see much difference between that and seek and you shall find.
No, it's similar.
Just, you know, anyway, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's kind of saying, don't seek and you shall find. I mean, you could say there's a little bit of truth in that, but anything that says you will find is way off the mark, because this isn't a finding. There's nothing to find. This is found, whether it's found or not. Because there isn't a finding. This isn't a finding. I'd say it most weeks, this isn't what I was looking for. I didn't find what I was looking for.
The expression came to me the other day there, and I mean it in both ways, and I include myself very much in the kind of negative side, but the non-duality is for losers.
Oh, without a doubt.
It's serious losers, I mean, really, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could just say it's this just absolute loss. Yeah, the loss of everything. So, but there is something wonderful about being in the company of losers as opposed to winners.
Mm. Leonard Cohen once wrote a book called Beautiful Loser.
I mean, the people you like being with now, you might call them all losers. And I mean, in a very real sense, it is complete loss. The loss of everything that I held most dear as part of myself. That's what's seemingly lost. And in the losing, nothing is lost. I mean, that is the good news. That's why this is worth speaking about. The seeming loss of everything that you call yours, that belongs to you, that is precious to you, is lost as yours. And in that, nothing is lost. Nothing at all. Because it turns out you never had anything, including the most precious possession of all, the thing that you hold most dear, which is yourself. The loss of that, which you feared much more than anything else, is not even recognized in its absence. The loss of self is no loss whatsoever. In the seeming losing, self may kick and scream and pray and shout to the heavens, to the universe, to God, to any fucker who'd listen. Please let me keep at least myself. No matter how much you've asked for the absence of yourself, it's not ever what self wanted. Because I need to be there. I need to see, I need to know, to be present, to know the loss of myself. And of course, there is no one present to know. That's why we can speak of this as not knowing.
David has his hand up. David H. Hello, Tim.
Hello, David.
It is a true pleasure to be amongst losers who have no sense of having lost anything, but yet it's all gone. I've been meditating on this today about the beauty of the freedom to not need any change at all, which is the only freedom that I can see. It's not a freedom to do this or that,
Mhm.
to choose or not to choose, but it's the freedom from inner conflict totally. There can be challenges, and there are challenges every day. It's
Yeah,
kind of like a runner who is in a race and knows that there are hurdles along the way. It doesn't bother him. He's not worried. He knows there's a hurdle coming. Not, he doesn't have any idea where it's going to, and then bam, there it is, and he jumps. That's the way with me in my life. Whatever happens, I jump to take the action that's necessary in the moment, and then it's over.
yeah,
I don't carry a win or a loss along with me ever. And I was just chatting today with some people who were amazed at some of the ways that I responded to some questions. And it's really just a matter of fact that there's no inner conflict. There are challenges, there are hurdles, there is pain, there is life, and yet each each is each and everything is met empty, and I go away empty. And actually, there's this delightful sense of being thankful that I'm not carrying any of that, and yet it's not something I dwell on.
no,
I look at the light,
yeah,
and I'm thankful for the light, but I don't expect it. I'm flying constantly into a perfect dark sky, and that's just perfect for me. It has no I have no reason to want to know what's coming to me.
no.
I have no reason to want it to come out any one particular way. However it
Mhm.
comes out, it's delightful, and I can't say that. Yeah, yeah. The language that you're using is beautiful to hear, Tim, and what David just shared with us as well. I love you all.
Thanks, David. Beautiful.
Hey, Joyce, go ahead. Joyce.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi. I just had this realization that all my questions that I want to ask that I've asked have to do with how do I get there? How
Yeah,
do I achieve this?
yeah,
How do I, whatever.
yeah.
And there's a knowing, but there's a frustration because I don't know what to ask to help me. And I just noticed that. I don't know if there's a question in there.
No, but that's a good answer, though. I'm quite happy for people to speak answers rather than questions.
What's the answer? There is no answer.
You just answered. You just said the answer.
There's no answer.
Well, or any answer. All answers are empty.
Yeah, I guess it's more, there's no question to ask.
Well,
Or what?
it seems, yeah. So if there's the piece, I quite often speak about this as the peace that passes all understanding. And the peace is in the absence of questions, questioning life. You know, which is what you are. So you question yourself and you're actually questioning life. You're in conflict, really. So self, generally, most human beings are always at odds with life, in conflict with it, because it's being questioned, called into question. This, which is all there is always being called into question by me, saying why, how, what, all the questions, every question is inevitably causing suffering. And by suffering, I mean conflicts. It's questions are this need to know, this incessant need to know, all comes from the sense of self's insecurity, that I need to feel safe.
Alexa, stop.
And if I know, then I'll be safe. Well, there is no security. That's the only security.
Yeah, so there's frustration there because I don't feel safe.
Exactly. And self doesn't feel safe.
Right.
And when self does feel safe, it's illusory.
So
So
self can't feel safe.
the whole sense of feeling safe is riddled, is absolutely full of fear, because of course, if I have security, I can lose it.
Right.
And self is always afraid of losing security. The only security is that life is inherently unsafe, is inherently unknowable. By unknowable, unsafe and unknowable are one and the same. Because the illusion is that I know what's happening. And if I know what's happening, then I can have an illusion. I have a sense of security. There's no security in life. Life is completely and utterly wild.
Wild.
And by wild, I just mean all human beings' selves' attempts of taming, sanitizing, domesticating this life are utterly futile. That doesn't mean to say they can't happen, but there can still be acting in a safe and secure way, but without the illusion of that it's real, that the safety is real. When life is very obviously utterly chaotic, wild and free, because the non-safety, the unsafeness of life is the freedom. So the great paradox is self says it wants liberation. It doesn't at all.
It will disappear.
Because self would be terrified, is terrified of this utter freedom, this unknowable freedom that is life. And so it's quite a pretense that self can pretend with itself that it wants freedom. It doesn't at all. Because the very energy of self is security.
But the only one who could ask a question or inquire is self.
Say again.
The only part of us that could ask questions, that could inquire, is self.
Well, I mean, there is no self, so I wouldn't say it that way. But yeah, the energy of needing to know, which is the energy of most questioning, is that it comes from a need to know, which comes from an insecurity and the illusion that more knowledge and understanding will bring me greater security and safety. It's completely illusory.
Yeah, because I just realized I've been identifying with that one who asks questions, who inquires as who I am.
Yeah.
And that's all false.
Well, the thing is, it's not false really, because there is no true and false, because I'm not speaking about truth. It's just futile is how I describe it. Because if I say it's false, it's suggesting, you know, that, oh, this is the truth. This isn't the truth. There is no truth to be spoken. And that's the liberation as too. When you're no longer, if you're no longer concerned about the truth, wow, what great freedom in that.
Yeah, I could see how that would happen.
Yeah.
Not my experience, but there's just a feeling of, I've talked about this before, of like, it seems like the more I get into this stuff, the more I feel stuck. You know, like what to do, where
Yeah.
to go, how to be.
Yeah.
And I know it's all.
Well, the wonder is that you don't need to know, Joyce. I mean,
Yeah.
Again, it's not a liberation that self would ever want.
Mm.
Because self wants to know the reasons, and it wants pretty certain outcomes. So if I do this, then I'm pretty certain of the outcome will, you know, that will lead me to that. It's all completely unknowable. It's more than unknowable. There actually isn't a future outcome. I mean, there's no place for me in that at all. So it's not that I can know or not know the outcomes of my decisions, my choices, my actions, my words. There are no outcomes. I mean, then there's nowhere to go, you know, but that is the absence of so much fear. I wouldn't say that what I'm speaking of is the absence of all fear, because a lot of fear that human beings have is natural. But it is this fear we have, the majority of psychological fear, anxiety, is just on the presumption of the reality of future.
Yeah.
As though we know the future will happen.
Yeah, we'd feel safer if we knew the future.
Yeah.
Right. So safety is important for the self.
It's paramount, yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I might say I'm less reckless than I used to be. So it can sound to self, well, without me, there would be, you know, it would just be it would just be total anarchy. I would be completely reckless with mine and others' safety. It's, again, a great lie that self says how important it is in keeping safe. Self says, I'm the only one who's keeping this all together and keeping it safe. And it's complete nonsense. But boy, it does make me significant, which is really all I care about. The one thing that self can't tolerate is insignificance. There's one thing worse, which is non-existence, but insignificance is pretty dreadful. That I'm as insignificant, you know, how as insignificant as a blade of grass or a fly or a raindrop.
Thank you. Thanks for nothing.
You're welcome, Joyce.
Once again.
Thanks. I would have never guessed that insignificance feels like love. Because when everything is empty, everything has an equality that it could never have in its thingness. So the thingness is still apparent of things. I mean material things. But of course, what self does is make some things really significant because they matter to me, and others utterly insignificant because they don't, you know, they're of no benefit to me, they don't affect me. When everything is equally empty, The emptiness is full of love. That makes no sense, but it doesn't matter at all that it makes no sense, because there is no making sense of life. This isn't about making sense of life. This is the end of the one who needed to make sense of life in order for there to be life in all its fullness. Well, that's all there ever is. And self-looking for significance is, to come back to what David said earlier, is the seeming veil. Now, I can't remember what he said, Tony said now, but it's like, that's the, what did you say, David? What was on that? What was the quote Tony said about that self was the...
No.
No.
Seeking is the most effective way to avoid liberation.
So seeking is the most effective way to
avoid liberation.
Avoid it. Avoid this. This is unavoidable. There's no avoiding life, is there? I mean, you could say that's what self, that's one of its projects. Not avoiding all of life, enhancing the bits I like and avoiding the bits that I don't like. Well, it all comes unbidden, completely free, unopposed. So the opposition that self has to aspects of life that it doesn't like, everyone knows that it's futile. The avoidance of pain. That's, that could be prime example, couldn't it? Self will do whatever it can to avoid pain, apart from the odd masochist. But for the majority of selves, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of effort going into avoiding pain. Pain is absolutely inevitable. And of course, the great underlying that avoidance of pain is avoidance of death. Well, there's nothing more stupid than that, is there? You don't know anyone who hasn't died. So this whole illusion that you can, by that I mean, historically, doesn't matter who you've got on a pedestal, they're pretty dead, aren't they? So the whole notion of beating death, it's an obsession. It's an obsession with self, because self says I exist. I'm not talking about physical death. I'm talking about, self, the annihilation of self, the non-existence of self. Because when there is only this, death is never absent. There is simply no time, no distance, no space between birth and death. This is always born, always passing away. There aren't even moments. There's so much. I mean, I used to love, I read a lot of that Power of Now course, but all the stuff about being in the moment, mindfulness. I don't know if I've told you before, I once trained as a mindfulness teacher. Wow. And I'm not dismissing mindfulness as unhelpful to self. It can be really helpful for a little bit of peace, a bit of respite from the constant, monkey talk. Just a little bit of quiet. But there's no escape. When there is no one to escape, there is no possibility of escape. That's the peace that passes all understanding. There's nowhere to go. Now, to self, that might even sound appealing, but it's never appealing to self, really. Self likes the idea of the peace, but surely, I can there's levels of peace. There's a hierarchy. And if I feel a bit of peace, then I could always have a bit more. Well, the peace that I'm speaking about isn't a peace for me. This is at peace. Regardless of what's going on. In full conflict, this is at peace. Simply because it's not moving. That's it. It's completely at rest.
Lindy has a hand up.
Hi, Lindy.
Hi, not quite sure where I'm going with this, but just talking about dying and death and stuff. I think I touched on this when we spoke a couple of weeks ago on here.
Right.
But just every now and again, when I allow myself, when I think about death and whatever, because the whole thing is completely unavoidable.
Yeah.
However much we don't want it to be. And
Yeah.
I guess sitting here, in some ways are coming more face to face with it than a lot of people, in a way.
Oh, without a doubt.
And it does occur to me, and I've heard people say this, I mean, nobody I know in particular, but I've heard it said that when somebody's, say, got a diagnosis of a terminal illness, shocking as it is, for some people, it seems it does kick them into touch with perhaps something allied to what we're talking about. Suddenly see everything brighter and shiny, a bit like a near-death experience,
Yeah.
as they're reported, I suppose.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, there's a lot of. I've known people who that's been their experience. They felt much more alive when death was completely real.
Yeah, and every now and again, because, well, obviously the seeking self is still trying to attain what we're talking about here. I mean,
Yeah.
on some level it's understood, and I don't know if it's accepted, but it's understood on one level that we can't do anything and we're never going to get it.
No.
But seeking energy still tries to be inventive. And one of the things for me, which I think what I mentioned before, just imagining dying. And of more recent times, just occasionally
Sorry, I've lost you there, Lindy. Say that again.
the idea. What would it? Sorry. I've been playing with the idea.
Yeah.
What would it be like to be told you'd only got so much time?
Yeah.
And just occasionally there's a little sort of tiny little what I guess feeling of what it might be like, for good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
But even that is almost impossible to try to, because the more I try to do that, because it might be valuable, the more that evades.
Yeah.
It's just like this self is just this almost cling film over everything, isn't it? You're trying to squidge out of it, but it just
trying
comes
to wriggle free.
Yeah, but it just comes with you wherever you go. It's just,
Yeah.
You like to think flexibility there, but when it comes to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not really a question there, it's just a comment.
No, thanks. Because really you haven't got, you can say, what would it be like to be told how long you've got? I mean, that's redundant when there isn't time. When there isn't, how many more tomorrows will I have? Well, none. There are no tomorrows.
Which is completely impossible, really, to.
And I'm not,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm not asking to imagine that. I'm just saying that that's how it is. Tomorrow is just imagination. That all of future is pure imagination. So
I think the time thing for me is the most difficult thing to even try and get even a tiny hook on it. Just that for me is the absolute brick wall of being able to even get an intellectual understanding of it, really.
yeah, and I would, well, if you get an intellectual understanding of it, I mean, that's irrelevant, really. That doesn't make any difference at all.
But you can't help but look, can you? You know,
No, of course not. No. Oh, but I mean, I mean, the time thing, if you are trying to get an intellectual.
What Joyce is saying, you know. Sorry, I missed that. That might be my connection.
I mean, it's not. It's not too much of a stretch to see for any human being to see that. I mean, it's a great cliche that my mother would say when she said, tidy your bedroom, and I said, I'll do it tomorrow. And my mother would say, well, tomorrow never comes. Now, it's a great cliche, but everyone knows that. Tomorrow does not appear. This appears. And I mean, that is a full stop. Really, really, that is the whole message there in that this appears, full stop. That's it. That's all of it. That's the whole message. Now, all the rest is superfluous to that. This appears. It's so utterly undeniable. You can't argue. There's no debate. There's no question. It's unquestionable. Does this appear? Is this appearing, I should say? Is this appearing? It's not questionable. And everything else, and simply everything else is a story. Now, as soon as you speak about what's appearing, why it's appearing, how it's appearing, it's all stories. This appearance, this happening, this that we call life is not a story. It is as soon as we think about it, speak about it, analyze it, label it, describe it. But the appearance is not. We are, so in the communication, and in thinking, or it's all stories. What we're speaking about is not a story until we speak of it.
So would you still say, though, so when you're saying real, I mean, you mean relatively or apparently real, as in other speakers are saying it's nothing and everything, as in it's all, everything's an illusion, or everything and nothing.
I wouldn't say what's appearing is an illusion. What you say about it is an illusion. Because the illusion is that I know something about it and I understand it. That's illusory. What's happening isn't. What's happening is all and nothing.
Okay.
And so because it's both empty and full, I mean, you've heard it 1,000 times, but the realness, which is the fullness, the thingness, you know, I can, this real cup, this real mug, I'm not saying that's illusory, but that I know it and I know what it is, how it is, what it's made of, it's what its origin is, its history, it's all story. So this, what you could say, reality, is both knowable, the known. I know it's a cup, but that the labeling of it is utterly empty. It doesn't mean anything. So the story is empty, and the emptiness of stories is what allows what seemingly is the freedom and liberation to then speak freely, because all words are empty. None of it is true. One of the great fears that self has is that I need to speak the truth. You know, I need to know the difference between real and unreal, and true and false. There is no knowing that. And it's wonderfully liberating when no one knows that. So you will never look to another human being to give you guidance on what's real or what's true ever again. Because the implication that any human being actually knows is dead. You can listen to anyone. So the fool and the guru are absolutely equal in this, you know? And again, that feels like love. When no one's special anymore. There is no special knowledge or special understanding. And of course, that's what I craved. That's what self has always craved, to be like a special one. So the irony of me sitting here speaking like a special one is not lost. It's funny. It's funny. But there is the speaking about it, this is because there is compassion. Call it love if you like. For those who can hear, and even more for those who can't hear. And there's no discriminating between those, by the way. I mean, that's something else that seems to die. Somebody asked me, I don't know, I think it was at the weekend, maybe in Brighton, or I certainly said about, oh, now because you're empty, you know, there's emptiness here. You must be able to recognize that emptiness there in another human being. So one empty as a noun for a non-self, an empty can recognize another empty. I said, no, there's only empty. There are no enlightened ones. There are no ignorant ones. There are no selves any more than there are selves. There is the appearance of human beings. And one of the wonders is the uniqueness of each human being without me and myself and my judgment of all the other selves based on myself, again, feels like love. Because there's absolutely equality. The inequality is, you know, there are higher and lower selves, because that's what I do with myself. I judge myself higher and lower. And so what do? I judge all other selves. by the way, I'm not talking about liking selves. I always have to put that in as a proviso. Liking and disliking human beings is utterly natural. But somebody is not a worse human being just because I don't like them. And they always were. Because self can't help but judge like me and unlike me. So the pretense is that I understand those who are like me and I don't understand those who are not like me. You won't be interested in understanding human beings anymore without yourself. I'm speaking here from someone who was obsessed with themselves and understanding themselves, and therefore obsessed with understanding other selves. I learned quite quickly that self-improvement didn't work. Through a lot of effort to self-improve, but was was impotent to prevent, the energy of self-improvement, which is seeking, was insatiable. Because this sense of being apart, being separate, being a part of the whole, a tiny little insignificant part of the whole. There's just this longing to be at one with, be at one with a lover, the perfect partner, be at one with nature, be at one with life, be at one with God. That's the suffering, that sense of not at one, not at rest, not at peace, longing for rest and peace. Because it's not here, it's not present, it's not already. Well, that's the illusion. That I am that longing, that desperate seeking for what already is. Has anybody else got a question or something they'd like to share before we finish? Anybody? Well, thanks for coming, everyone. For the time being, I'm going to still, I'm going to have a meeting every 2 weeks. So the next meeting will be in a fortnight, and the clocks will have gone forward in the UK. So if your clocks where you are don't change, bear that in mind. So it'll be 7 p.m. British summertime here, but that will be the equivalent of 6 p.m. That's lovely talking about time. If you ever want to know, you want to know the nonsense of time, there you have it.
Yeah.
I mean, clocks going forward and backwards. What the hell? Arbitrarily, the government decides what time it is. That's quite funny, isn't it? I always found it ridiculous as a child because I was like, well, it's either 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. It can't be 6 o'clock this week and 7 o'clock next week, surely, the same time. But yes, it can. Because we're making time up.
I love what you said about tomorrow never comes. That's really lovely. And when it does seemingly come, it's always this.
Well,
Yesterday
you might have noticed that yesterday when it was today.
Yeah.
And isn't it wonderful that it's only today? That's all you've got to live. Forget about, when we talked about, when I was talking with Lindy about how, if you knew how long you'd got. Well, I'd tell you how long you got. You got today. Because by tomorrow, it will be today.
Today. Yeah.
And that's all you've got.
Tim, I love the way your clock behind you is always stopped.
Yeah. Well, Kelly is Kelly's clock, and Kelly said I should get that working. I went, no, leave it. I like it, so it doesn't move. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Somebody said that there's always there is the appearance of time. I went, no, there's not. No, time is not an appearance. Time is a memory and an imagination. It is not appearance. It appears as a memory of what just happened. There is no time in this appearing. There is no time in the appearance. And without time, there is no me. I only live in time. If you get a whiff of that, if you get a scent of it, you might feel the ground actually moving beneath your feet, evaporating, because I stand on time. That is where I live. By the way, the ground's fine. The ground doesn't go anywhere. It may well feel, though, that it's actually fallen away. Because what the fuck am I going to do now without time? What will I do? What the fuck am I going to do? It's so true. It's a terrible freedom, but I wish it for you all, as futile as wishes are. Thanks very much for coming, everybody. The clock has a mind of its own. It sure does. Yeah, I hope to hopefully see some of you in a fortnight, when it will be today, this evening. I have got I've booked a meeting in London in Hampstead for the 16th of April. So if any of you could get to London, that would be wonderful. If not, it was great last time. I love doing the Zooms, but meeting and being together is about as good as it gets. So thanks very much for coming.
So are those details on your website for the meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll put it on Facebook, and I think
All right.
I'll put it on the website as well. If not, I will do this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
For coming, everybody. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Tim.
Tim.
Absolutely amazing.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Thanks you both very much.
Have a great day to everyone.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.